My wife cheated on her husband and lives to regret it when her daughter disowned her. Me and Joseph have been together since our university days. Back then, two young men were vying for my attention, Joseph and his friend Ryan. Both tried to win my heart, but in the end, I told Joseph he was more serious and driven, while Ryan was charismatic but not very serious. I was already thinking about the future and desired a committed relationship. My relationship with Joseph progressed very quickly, and before we knew it, we got married and started a family. Recently, our daughter turned 7 years old. The first 2 years of our married life were peaceful, but over time I began expressing my dissatisfaction with Joseph a lot more frequently. I started noticing things about him that would just really bug me. I also found myself constantly comparing him to the husbands of my friends who didn't yet have children. However, I grew tired of hearing how those husbands spoiled their wives with gifts and frequently went on vacations by the sea, and so on. My own life just seemed dull to me. I got sick of the same boring routine, work, home, taking care of the children. Our apartment was small, my job was boring, and everything just felt monotonous. One day my frustration reached the next level, and I started criticizing my husband Joseph again for not advancing in his career. He wasn't very successful in my eyes and just didn't have any drive to want to do better. I gave examples of my friends' husbands who started building businesses and were very successful. Joseph eventually grew tired of constantly hearing me complain, and that evening we had a heated argument. We didn't speak for a few days, and a few days later, Joseph was at work when he received a phone call. It was Ryan, his former classmate. They occasionally kept in touch, but not very often. They had a great catch-up over the phone, and then Ryan finally revealed the reason for his call. It was his birthday in a few days, and he wanted to invite Joseph and me to his house as he was planning a birthday gathering. Joseph immediately and eagerly anticipated the wonderful evening. He thought it would be a good opportunity for me and him to relax and just unwind. We rarely went out together, and maybe that was why I was so irritable. When Joseph came home, he told me about the invitation from Ryan. To his surprise, I happily agreed, and he felt relieved. Maybe this time away from reality is exactly what we needed. On the day of Ryan's birthday gathering, we decided to leave our daughter with her grandmother. The moment we arrived at Ryan's house, my eyes lit up. It was spacious, with modern renovations and a huge living room where all the guests gathered. There were even a few familiar faces from our university days. Everyone congratulated the birthday boy and was fascinated by his achievements at work. It seemed like Ryan had it all. Joseph and I quickly immersed ourselves in the festive atmosphere. While Joseph engaged in lively conversations with the guests, I focused on the host of the evening. I watched him intently, amazed at how well things turned out for him. Getting reacquainted with Ryan was so refreshing, and as the night flowed, so did the alcohol. The guests kept pouring drinks for Joseph, and soon he became heavily intoxicated. He rarely drank alcohol, so large amounts were unfamiliar to him. Not wanting to disturb anyone, he went to another room and just laid down on the couch to get some rest. The celebration continued, and while Joseph was trying to sober up, I didn't leave Ryan's side. He opened my eyes to a completely different life. "You know, I still don't understand why we didn't work out back then," I said thoughtfully, looking at him with deep meaning in my eyes. Everyone was already drunk, and Ryan took my words literally. He didn't waste any time and discreetly grabbed my hand, leading me to his bedroom. Old feelings resurfaced, and we began to kiss. The chemistry between us was so strong, and we slept together. In that moment, I didn't feel any doubt or guilt. I was already envisioning my beautiful life with Ryan. Amidst the cheerful shouts of the guests in the neighboring room, everything unfolded. I cheated on my husband for the first time, and to make it worse, it was with his friend. Some time later, Joseph woke up from the loud, joyful shouts of the guests. He must have seen the time and then probably decided that it was time to go home. He went to the living room where everyone was and saw me there. I was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, just staring into space as I was so lost in thought. That's when Joseph wandered off, revisiting the events from earlier. At first, Joseph didn't pay much attention to it, as he had just woken up and had a pounding headache. After saying our goodbyes to everyone, we called a taxi and headed straight home. Joseph practically fell asleep as soon as his head touched the pillow. Meanwhile, I sat in the kitchen for a long time before going to bed. About a month passed since the incident, and me and Ryan were still seeing each other from time to time. Each day, I spoke less and less to my husband, and I started meeting up with my friends a lot more frequently too. My eyes were open wide to a life that I had been deprived of for so long. When the atmosphere in the house became unbearable, Joseph directly asked me what was happening. That's when he heard the last thing that he expected. I exploded like a volcano. I started saying everything that had been building up inside of me. Firstly, I expressed dissatisfaction with our standard of living, then household problems, and most importantly, that I'm no longer attracted to him. I really went off on one here, and once I started, I just could not shut myself up. Well, who does attract you then? Joseph asked, to which I looked him in the eyes and responded, saying, Ryan. After such a declaration, it was impossible to remain silent. I stated that I was tired of my life with Joseph and was expecting a whole different life with Ryan. And that's the moment that I told him that I was leaving him. Our daughter was already asleep, so Joseph tried not to raise his voice. But when he asked about our child and her future, I replied, saying, we'll figure it out later, and went to pack my things. Later, Joseph phoned Ryan to talk about men's matters. But after mentioning their disagreements, Ryan hung up and started ignoring his calls. I then filed for divorce, and throughout this period, I visited our daughter only once. I truly missed her, and I wanted to see custody of our daughter. But Ryan convinced me not to, as a parent currently. Ryan was not for the material. Moreover, Joseph would never allow his daughter to grow up with a stranger. Anyways, so Joseph lived along with our daughter while I lived in Ryan. Joseph said that it was difficult to answer all our daughter's questions about where I am. But eventually it seemed like she understood everything herself. There were moments where I'd feel a little guilty and question whether or not I made the right choice, but I clung tightly to my new life and found happiness with Ryan. However, it didn't last very long. Ryan turned out to be unready for a committed relationship. He always wanted to have fun and not be tied down. After some time, I began comparing him to my now ex-husband Joseph and noticed that Joseph wasn't as bad as I thought. After 6 months of dating Ryan, I got home a little earlier than normal, only to find Ryan in bed with another woman. I thought, heartbroken, that he had cheated on me, and that was the icing on the cake. At that moment, I broke up with Ryan, as I realized that I had made a huge mistake in my life. The guilt of what I did lived rent-free in my mind. I started to see things more clearly and realized how much I was neglecting. At the same time, to see our daughter was very tough with Ryan in the scene, as Ryan wasn't interested in my child at all and made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with my daughter. Because of this, I hardly ever had the chance to see her. At best, I saw her once or twice a month. But then I noticed that when I'd see her, she didn't really want to see me, and she kept on asking when I can take her home back to Daddy. Even when we were together, me and my daughter hardly spoke. The last time I dropped our daughter off, I said in front of her and Joseph we could go somewhere as a family or study, maybe we can have dinner together. When I said these things, our daughter would then look at Joseph and nod their head left and right, and then she just ran upstairs to her bedroom. When our daughter ran off to a room, me and Joseph were alone, and on a serious note, Joseph told me not to interfere with her life anymore. He told me that our daughter said that she doesn't want to see me anymore and told me that she doesn't like it when I pick her up. My heart sank like the Titanic at this moment, as I didn't realize how different I became and how much I've been neglecting my daughter until then. He then told me that he's planning to speak to a lawyer about getting full custody of adults, as he made it clear that there could be nothing more between them. I became completely numb from my head to my toes at this point because my daughter was my whole entire life, and I completely screwed up to the point of no return. I left my beautiful family to change my life. I am myself in a passionate relationship, but as is often the case, the grass wasn't green on the other side, and I literally ruined my life. I just could not believe how much I screwed up to the point where my daughter disowned me for 6 months of fun. I missed my family so much. I once had the perfect family. I always think about the family games that we'd play, the movie nights, vacations. I begged Joseph to give me a second chance to be a family, and unfortunately, I got straight out rejected. He told me that he started dating someone from work, and things are going great between them. He said that even our daughter has built a great relationship with her too. I learned in that second that I was not only disowned by my daughter and my ex-husband, but I was also replaced. In the end, everyone gets what they deserve, and I've now got to spend the rest of my life suffocating in my mistakes, living alone in my mediocre life with no one truly loving me and no one genuinely caring about me. Well, where to start? Literally bottom of the barrel for the streets. I think I've said enough at this point. These hoes ain't loyal. I don't know who she thinks she is. There's a few things that I must cover here. How on earth does she think it's normal to not only cheat on her husband but cheat on her husband with her husband's friend? That is just below the belt as it gets. But I'm gonna get on to Ryan now. It seemed like Ryan and Joseph weren't best friends, it just seemed like they spoke intermittently. So maybe he didn't really owe Joseph anything. So in his head, he was single, ready to mingle. He had his dirty bottom of the barrel for the streets that was throwing herself at him. He obviously had a bit of money. She was sold and thought that her life would be 10 times better. But there is one thing I can't believe. I cannot get over the fact that this weasel Ryan told her point blank, I do not want your daughter in my life. I don't want anything to do with her. And for that reason, she was forced to see her daughter less, to the point where her daughter didn't even want to know her anymore. And she thought that was acceptable. Listen, if I split up with my wife and I'm a single dad and the woman tells me that she doesn't want anything to do with my kids, may you are for the streets. I don't want anything to do with you either. And for me, that's an instant deal breaker. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye. Now that's how I'd see it. I wouldn't even give her a second more of my time. The fact that he was literally talking so much crap about her daughter, but she was willing to settle because of the money and their lifestyle. May you made your bed, now you've got to lie in it. I hope you suffer. You wanted this disgusting bottom of the barrel, and you know what? The grass ended up being green on the other side for Joseph, funny enough. Joseph's done the right thing. I wish you happily ever after, while I wish you happily never after. And though, like I say to you, it's R.I.P. because I don't think you're ever gonna get over this. You know what? I'll give you this, because this is the Reddit Relationship Podcast. Instead of saying R.I.P., I'm gonna say R.R.P. R.R.P., my friend. You are done for. And on that note, that brings us to the end of today's video. Make sure you smash that like button. Let me know down below in the comments if you agree with this screen, what I've said. I really want to get your thoughts on everything. I love reading your comments, so keep them coming. And consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss any future stories or updates to this story. And on a final note, if you've enjoyed this story, you're gonna love the one that's about to appear on the screen in 3 seconds. And I'll see you on it. Take care.